Welcome back to JR Pro Shop Vids, everyone. We're here in Zone Bowling, Coquitlam at JR Pro Shop. Today we're going to be installing 3 of the most popular interchangeable thumb inserts on the market. As you can see, there are 4 here though. The 4th one is made by Brunswick. It's called Ultimate. We're not going to install that today just because it's not sponsored on the PBA Tour and it's not that popular. We don't really see it around, but this is what it looks like. This is the outer. And today Barks is going to be drilling 3 holes and installing 3 thumbs into 3 different balls here, and we're going to walk through the process of each one. As you may have noticed in league and tournament, almost everyone has an interchangeable thumb. Barks, can you tell us a little bit about why everyone has an interchangeable thumb when you're bowling competitively?
Yeah, for sure. So the biggest benefit is going to be consistent feel from ball to ball, but the other benefit that people don't maybe realize is being able to adjust the different sizes. If you're bowling in a different environment, it's a little bit more humid, a little hotter, a little colder, your thumb's going to either swell or contract. So that gives you a little bit more flexibility in fine-tuning that grip. So most competitive bowlers out there are going to have probably 3 to 4 different thumbs in different sizes. Another benefit is being able to adjust pitches very easily. So instead of in a traditional ball having to drill out every ball that you have that has a traditional thumb slug in it, we can drill one new interchangeable with a slightly different pitch, let you try that, see if you like that, and then you can use that in every ball. So throughout the video, I'm going to go over the pros and cons, both from our perspective as pro shop operators, and maybe from your perspective as bowlers, to see which one of these may be best for you.
All right, just before we send Barks over here to get drilling, 2 different things from each interchangeable thumb. When you order a kit, each thumb has its own drill bit, and each for a different purpose. There's a stopper on the drill bit, which makes the hole a certain depth. You need that perfect depth so that each thumb goes into each ball and sits flush. The Jopo is a little deeper than the Turbo. And for Vise here, it's not your traditional sized bit. It is slightly bigger in diameter just because we need to fit this top sleeve in around the thumb slug at the top. So we have 3 different thumbs, 3 different drill bits that we need to install these. So let's get to work. Barks, let's make some dust.
Let's go. Okay, so we're here on the press. We stole a couple balls from Jung. He's got too many as it is. Grab some of the older ones. We're going to install them in these ones. So one thing we're going to highlight is actually you can go from a traditional slug to an interchangeable pretty easily. Let's start with the Turbo interchangeable on this one. Easily the most popular one in this shop, and I would say across most of Canada. So first thing we're going to do is going to drill out the existing slug. We'll go from there. All right, so for the 1.5" bit for the Turbo interchangeable, it has this depth stopper at the very top. This is set at the factory at a particular depth. So this is the exact depth that you're gonna want when you're installing the outer. It's gonna make it really consistent. You can hit it up against the ball and it's always gonna be the same depth every time. So we've used the 1.5" bit with the stopper. Now we're not exactly done, we're not quite ready to install the outer sleeve just yet. So if I tried to put this in now, it would be very, very tight. And these are supposed to go in loose. So there's one more step for the Turbo install, and that's using this reamer bit. So this is gonna shave off a very small amount around the hole, has that same depth stopper so you know where to stop, and that's gonna let this outer sleeve drop in loosely. You don't want it to go in tight. If it goes in tight, the install of the inner is going to be really tight as well. So now that we've used that reamer bit to trim a little extra around the hole there, I like to take a piece of 400 grit sandpaper and just barely get the edge of this hole. We don't want any sharp holes when we're doing installs on bowling balls. It just creates a pressure point and we want to eliminate that risk of the ball potentially cracking. So now that we've used that reamer bit, this outer sleeve just drops right in now. So when installing these, we don't want to put them in just as they are. We actually want to scuff them up a little bit, give them a little bit more surface area so the glue can really adhere to it and it doesn't come out of the ball. I don't know how many times. Thousands? It is in the thousands. I don't know how many. I can tell you how many customers have come through the door. I can't tell you how many balls. It's impossible to know. So when installing this, you want to put a thin bead of glue. I like to put it right below where the cover stock is. I think doing that will minimize the risk of cracking. So anything we can do to not put glue on the cover stock is going to be good for the bowling ball. With these, there is a little notch here at the very top of the sleeve. And that shows where the bottom of the interchangeable needs to be lined up with. in accordance to where the center line of the ball is. So I'm trying to line that up with that spot right there, and then just hammer it the rest of the way. And that's that. So after this, we give it maybe 5 to 10 seconds for that glue to really harden and keep that in place. And then we're going to cut this down. All right, so that's the outer sleeve installed. Pretty simple, a couple different bits, not a whole lot of tools, pretty easy to do. All right, so now we're going to show you how to install the switch grip inner. So the first thing you're going to do, drop that in the hole there, the one you just drilled. Now it's only going to go in one way and drop down, and the best way to kind of lock this in place is with a pair of pliers. Kind of lock that down, turn it until you feel it lock into place. So the bottom of these, there's 2 locking tabs. When you twist it all the way, you'll feel resistance and it pops into place, and you'll hear it, it's audible. So this is in, it's ready to drill now. So we're just gonna do a round hole to demonstrate how this gets drilled out, how it gets cut down, and how it gets finished. One thing you wanna be mindful of when drilling these is you don't wanna go too deep. You're gonna end up hitting that locking mechanism and it's not going to work properly. You're probably gonna destroy the interchangeable. So now the depth on this is the same depth as a regular slug. It might take a little bit of time to figure out exactly where that mark is. You'll feel it when you go through the bottom. When you do, I would suggest marking it on the press so you don't ever hit that locking mechanism. So let's drill that up. All right, so now that I've drilled through, I felt it get through the very bottom of that slug, and I didn't go much further than that because I don't want to hit the bottom. So cutting this down is the same process as cutting down the outer, the turbo plug cutter. We're just going to make sure our press is zeroed, which it is, and then we're just going to cut this flush. So now that that's all done, we're going to take it off the press, and we're just going to finish the thumb hole with a bevel sander just to smooth that out. Obviously you don't want sharp edges, it's very uncomfortable. So let's do that quickly. So I've been using these interchangeables for a long time, so for me it's very easy to get them in and out with just my thumb. Some people have a little harder time with it, so there are tools to help in that process. So drop this in and then twist it counterclockwise. It'll be a half turn and it'll come out right with it. So if you do struggle with it, there are tools available, so ask your pro shop. They should have them in stock. Hopefully they do. If not, come see us. All right, so one of the big benefits for turbo is the ability to mix and match colors. The Fate that we drilled here today has pink engravings, so we matched it with a pink outer sleeve and a pink thumb slug. Lots of colors to choose from, lots of variety, so if you want to mix and match, feel free to do that. Yeah, personally, I like to match the outer sleeve to the engraving. Some people like to match the ball, some people like to go wildly different, but the choice is yours. So that's everything for turbo. Let's move on to Jopo. So now we're going to install a Jopo. The process for drilling the outer is very similar, so we're not going to talk too much about that. So we're just going to line it up with, again, an existing jung ball and go from there. All right, so taking a look at the Jopo bit, very similar in design to the turbo one. If we put them side by side though, if you line up the bottoms of those collars there, it is quite a bit deeper on the Jopo. So it's something you can convert over if you wanted to go from turbo to Jopo. It is possible. The process is the same. We're gonna go to that depth stopper. After that, it's a little bit different. I'll show you that. So one thing that's different with the Jopo versus the turbo is that I don't need to use a reamer bit for this. I use that 1.5" hole, and this drops right in. Yeah, so unlike the turbo where we had a little bit of extra material sticking out of the top, the Jopo, when that goes in, there's not much left to cut. Much easier as far as cutting that down on the install. Other than that, the process is roughly the same. We're still sanding this to give it more surface area. So unlike the turbo one that had this little notch here, the Jopo actually has a full line that goes down. That makes it a little bit easier to install it and line it up properly. So same thing as the top of the ball with the turbo. We just want to ease that edge a little bit with some sandpaper. We don't want it to be sharp. Sharp holes lead to a lot of cracked bowling balls. So if we can round that off a little bit, it's going to save a lot of balls in the long run. So what's nice about having this jig here is it moves very easily. I don't have to move the ball, I just move the jig. So I can line this up properly. All right, same thing, just a bead of glue at the very top. Doesn't take a whole lot. And that's it. So you can see that little notch at the bottom there is lined up with our center line here. So. But yeah, pretty easy process on that. Very similar to the turbo install. So a little different on the Jopo inner. It comes with a pre-drilled hole. It's a 5/8 hole. And the reason being is that when this drops in, you do need the locking tool. There are tabs at the bottom that this hooks into to turn it in and lock it in place. So we're gonna turn it and eventually start to twist down into the ball. And then I'm gonna need the locking tool to go the rest of the way. And it's a very loud click there. It's really easy to hear. So that's in, it's secure. Now we can drill through this one. Same as the turbo, we don't wanna go too deep. We don't wanna hit that locking mechanism. You'll feel it on the way down. Yeah, that's pretty much it. One thing I've noticed with trying to take some of these Jopo inserts out, it's really hard to do it by hand. You really do need the locking tool to get these out. If I tried to do it by hand, I'd be here all day. So unlike the turbo that has 2 locking tabs on the bottom, the Jopo has 3 locking tabs and it screws in on the side. So unbelievably secure. This is never coming out of the ball. So for putting this in, similar process to the turbo. We're gonna drop it in and we're gonna turn it until those threads really catch. You'll see it really sink into the ball. And at the very end, again, locking tool and lock it into place. All right, so next up we got Vise. One of the benefits of Vise is you can fine tune the size of the slug. You can use 1 1/8, 1 1/4, 1 3/8, or if you got a really big thumb, 1 1/2. So for our purposes today, we're gonna do the 1 1/4 size, probably the most popular one, and show you how that's done. So like Jordan said in the intro, we have a drill bit that's slightly larger than the size of the slug. Same idea with the depth stopper. A lot of the interchangeable systems use a very similar stopper. Just makes the install very consistent. You're not gonna have any depth issues. So we're gonna drill this one and then show you the rest of the install because it's a little bit complicated. So what we're gonna do here is install the top sleeve. Now this is not necessary. Sometimes it can go in the ball. You can also put it on the slug itself. I actually kind of prefer that option because it's less glue in the ball. We talked about it before. Less glue in the ball means less likelihood of cracking, and we don't like cracking. So most people are gonna do it this way. Install the top sleeve. Just gonna sand that, give it some texture. We're gonna glue the very, very top, and then we're just gonna knock it in. Are flush with the ball there. So unlike the other interchangeable systems that had sleeves that attached on the side, this one attaches at the very bottom. So we have to install what's called a ball it. What Mark Buffa taught me to do is to glue these 2 pieces together before you put them in. Just makes it a little bit more secure and less likely to not be the right depth. A little bit of glue there and there. Pop that in, and push that through. And just let that sit there. So the next step is to attach the ball it to the insertion tool. So we're gonna twist that in there. Sometimes these need a little extra help to make sure they're exactly in place. So we want to sand all the surfaces here before we glue it in, make sure it really sticks to it well. So a little bit different than how the turbo and the Jopo went in. This one's going to twist in. Also, the spot to line it up is on the insertion tool, not on the insert itself. So first thing we're going to do, glue our surfaces here. So we're going to install this in. There is a line here that lines up with the bottom of the ball here. So we're going to put that on the opposite side. So we have that glued there. We're going to slide this in and twist to get glue all over the bottom of that hole there. And then just line it up at the very bottom there. We're going to take a push down rod and a hammer, slide that through there, and just knock this down. Make sure everything's settled down at the very bottom. Just take the vise screwdriver. We're going to install the safety molly here. There are 2 ends to this. One has a bit of a bigger opening than the other. You want the bigger opening at the very top. That's just gonna drop in there. We're just gonna knock that down. And that's installed. It's a lot of steps, right? So now that we've knocked all those pieces in place, this is gonna be a very secure locking mechanism. Now we're just gonna twist this out. And that bottom piece is installed. So unlike the other interchangeable systems where we could drill the insert in the ball, we're not doing that with Vise. So we're actually gonna take this out of the jig because we're gonna drill the thumb in the Ferrari ball jig. So this has different pieces that go in depending on the slug size. So this drops in, and you can line up top line there with that line right there. So there are markings for different degrees if you just want to drill straight across. That's not how we like to do it if we're doing ovals here. Because we do trapezoids, it becomes a bit of an issue. So we're just going to line it up at 0. And if we were doing an oval, we're not going to do that today, but if we're doing an oval, we would just do it that way. We drop this in and do our oval as we normally do. So now we have this in place. There is a notch on the back of the slugget that lines up with the notch here in the Ferrari ball jig. So that just drops right in, and then we can drill it. It's pretty simple. This is the only simple part of Vise. So you're going to take that same inch bit. One thing that's good about the Vise slugs is that there is a little dimple in the very middle of this, so it's really easy to line up with the center of the hole. Most of the other slugs are going to actually have a raised, like a hatch line, so you have to line up with something that's above the surface. This one can actually drop right into it, so it makes life a little bit easier. You know, at least they're trying to make my life easier. Right, so we're lined up there, we're ready to go. Now with these, when you're drilling through them, it's impossible to drill through the actual assembly because there is a small little metal piece at the bottom that prevents the drill bit from going through. Again, another positive there. So right there I get to the very bottom and I'm pushing against metal and it won't go any further. So that's why I know I'm at the bottom of the hole. We can just take this slug out of the assembly. There is a little metal piece there, so we can just knock that out. And that's out. And then to reinforce it, a safety molly there. That's going to install right at the bottom here. So one end goes in the bottom there, then we just drop this piece here. Hopefully it goes in properly, which it did not. And then we're just going to twist this one into it to really secure the locking mechanism at the bottom. We might need Allen keys for this portion of it because it gets a little complicated. So that's twisted in, secure. Now we don't cut this down in the ball jig, we actually cut this one down in the bowling ball, the one we just drilled. So I'm going to take this out. So Ferrari ball jig goes away. I'm not sure why it's called a Ferrari ball jig. If anyone does know, let us know down in the comments. Seems like a very strange name for a bowling related item, but what you gonna do? Fit it. Drill it. Isn't it? Maybe the bit is a drill it. Yeah, so for the Vise slug, it has these threads at the bottom. You're gonna drop this in. It's gonna twist, I think, 2 times around before it locks in. And you'll see that notch in the back of the thumb that we had when we were drilling it lines up with the center line. We were drilling the ball at the bottom. We were installing that. So now that we drilled it, we just want to cut it down flush in the ball. Maybe one of the detriments is that you have to pitch the hole in the ball. You can't do it in the thumb itself. The other systems give you a little bit of flexibility with thumb pitches. For this, it has to be drilled at 0 in the Ferrari ball jig, and then the pitch is actually in the hole. So for you to adjust pitches can be a little bit complicated. So like turbo, you can take these out by hand. I have an easy time doing it just because I've done so many interchangeables before in my life, but some people struggle with it a little bit. So Vise does make the change it, and same idea as the switcheroo from turbo. It just twists out and you can pop that right out. All right, so that's the 3 most popular interchangeable systems. Let's wrap it up and we'll talk a little bit about pros and cons of each of them.
All right, we're back from drilling. Well, Barks is back from drilling. I don't like to get dusty, so Barks is all the drilling. All 3 balls, interchangeables are complete. So Barks, tell me a little bit about the pros and cons of drilling each interchangeable thumb, because they're all a little bit different in their own way.
So let's start over here with turbo. Very easy to install, only a couple parts required, a couple different drill bits. Very user-friendly for me as a ball driller. I've been using it myself for about 15 years and never had an issue. Very rare to have an issue with any customers breaking any tabs or having outer sleeves come loose or anything like that. Lots of variety of different colors, so you can match it to the ball or the engraving. You can customize it in that respect, so I really like that aspect of it. Just really easy to use and a very good system. So moving on from turbo, we're going to go to Jopo. This is a system that's becoming a lot more popular over the last couple of years. Especially this past season, they've really expanded the color line. We just did black today, that's all we really had in stock, but all different color options, both the inners and outers. Very secure locking mechanism. It is a hair more expensive, but you're paying for that extra security, so maybe that's a good trade-off. It really depends on how you feel about that. It is a little bit harder to take in and out without a locking tool. Unlike turbo, it tends to be a little bit easier just doing it by hand. But that really speaks to the security of the system. It's not ever going to come out when you don't want it to. So overall, a little bit more expensive than turbo, but also a little more secure. The trade-off is you do need that locking tool, but that just speaks to how secure a system it really is. And then moving on lastly to Vise, probably the most complicated system to install. It functions the same way in general as the others. It just requires a lot more parts to accomplish the same thing. From a pro shop perspective, you have to carry about 12 unique parts at any given time, and that can be a little bit difficult to keep stocked properly and have everything that all your customers need. For Vise, the big benefit is you can have any slug color that you really want. The only downfall is that the top sleeve only comes in black, so if you want something that maybe stands out against the ball, you don't have that flexibility. Cost-wise, it is a little bit less expensive than the other options on the table here. There is more time involved in doing the install. There's more parts that need to be stocked, so there is a trade-off there. Overall, I do think it's a really good system. It's just a little bit complicated to install and a little bit time-consuming. All right, so you've heard my thoughts. What are your thoughts about all these different systems, Jordan?
All right, I'm gonna give you the bowler's perspective here on all these interchangeables. First of all, Vise, it looks like it's just got a solid slug in there, right? There's not a big giant top outer sleeve. So it's a little bit more sleek looking, and it looks a little bit more thin, right? So if you like your balls looking a little bit more sleek, a little bit more tidy, Vise system does that for you. Where Jopo and Turbo, they look pretty much the same from the top. When the thumb's in there, you can't really tell, but the hole does look bigger. It is bigger. Just depends what you like to see. So I've been around, I've been to lots of tournaments with lots of high-level bowlers, and I've definitely seen a little bit more problems with the Vise just because there is a lot of parts to install. Right, so if one little part is off or doesn't get glued properly or this or that, the thumb could become loose or it can become a little bit unstable within the locking mechanism. So you just have to be a little bit careful with that, make sure everything's installed properly. But if it is installed properly, you should have no problem at all. The benefit of having a Jopo or a Turbo is that it's just one simple outer sleeve. So if something happens to break or come loose, you can just drill out the outer sleeve, pop a new one in, and continue bowling within 5 or 10 minutes. There's a little simplicity there that's very beneficial when you're traveling and you don't really have a pro shop, right? Or the pro shop guy in the bowling alley can just do a simple job for you in 5 or 10 minutes. So one of the common problems that we found with Jopo and Turbo is that there might be some material from the back of the lane that gets in between the outer sleeve and the ball, and that causes the outer sleeve to shrink in a little bit and be hard to get your thumb in there. So you're gonna have to dig those out. So those are like the cons of having an interchangeable thumb. There is like different parts and different things that go wrong as you're bowling. So when you're traveling or you're bowling a league in a house that doesn't have a pro shop, right, that ball could be out of play for that day. So those are definitely cons of having an interchangeable thumb. The pros of having an interchangeable thumb is that if you're a tournament bowler or very competitive, you need that good feel. You need that perfect thumb fit in order to have the proper release and have that consistency. So when you ball change, you can use the same thumb and each ball have the same feel. Go frame to frame, ball to ball, nothing's different, right? You can make that good shot again rather than having a slightly different feel and a different thumb and a different ball, and it comes off your hand slightly differently. You don't want that. So definitely you need an interchangeable thumb if you have multiple balls and you want to bowl competitively and you bowl in different houses, different climates, different cities, etc. It's a must. I would say all three installed properly, very secure, very well made. Just Turbo is the most simple, right? Jopo is probably the most secure, and then Vise here is the most inexpensive. So each has their pros and cons, and consult your pro shop operator when you want to switch over to an interchangeable thumb.
And that's something we showed here today, is that you can take an existing thumb slug and add an interchangeable. It's really not that much work. It's not a difficult process to accomplish.
And just one little tidbit of information at the end. If you do have an interchangeable thumb system, I would suggest getting a couple different sizes. Do your normal thumb, the one that feels good. Do one slightly smaller, one drill bit down, and do one drill bit up. So you have 3 different sizes. Color code them, right? Yeah. So depending on what you like to use, what color, I would color code your thumbs to the sizes and make sure everything's in order so that when you're bowling a tournament, you know exactly what's what. And you'll be surprised how often you switch thumbs based on the size to get that good feel. So here at JR Pro Shop, we are mainly Turbo. We do Turbo for everybody except if you're out of town and you already have an interchangeable thumb of a different brand. So we will continue that on for you. We're not going to switch you over, right? Yeah. We do love Turbo because of the simplicity. We can pump out a bunch of balls real quick, and it's very sturdy, and the colors look great. So we are Turbo here at JR Pro Shop. but we are not only turbo.
All right. So question for today's vid, if you are using an interchangeable system, which one are you using and why do you use it? Let us know down in the comments. Thanks for watching, everybody. Hope you learned a little bit about some interchangeable thumb systems and which one's the best for you. We'll see you in the next video.